Should we tax the childless?
We would not be wise to propose a policy called taxing the childless. And I've never proposed that, although I did write an article once where that was the headline. And what I suggested in that article was a number of things. One is that we have a real issue of childlessness and too few children. Secondly, that we should acknowledge that, and we've never had a government that has acknowledged it. And thirdly, we then need to look at a variety of policies to address it. Now, what would those policies be? There are a whole range of things, and my new book, which is coming out later this year, No One Left, will address very systematically what other countries have tried, what appears to work and what doesn't. And by the way, I think policy will anyway only get us so far. But if we are looking at policies, we have to look at the tax and benefit systems. Now, at the moment, in the UK and in many other countries, we have a benefit system that gives you money if you have children. Is it high enough? Too low? Does it claw money back in the right way? Should it go to an endless number of children? All up for debate, but it's absolutely accepted that if you have children, you get extra benefits. Called child benefit now, it used to be called family allowance, and that's very normal. Now, I don't have a problem with at least discussing whether we should reflect having children in the tax system, as many people do. Now, of course, the easy answer then is tax cuts for the childless, but we know that the government's running a very big deficit. So rather than just say, I'm a demographer and I think you should throw money at this issue, my issue, as if no other people from defence to health to every other cause aren't calling on the government for money. Rather than that, I'm saying maybe we should have something that is tax neutral, possibly, but which recognises childbearing and changes the tax burden so that you pay a little less if you have children and a little more if you don't. So that is the slightly long-winded answer to a question, a very blunt question. It needs a slightly more nuanced answer, forgive me.
I definitely wanted to chat about it because I've seen the numerous headlines that were quoting that article, and a lot of them were outraged, obviously, like in terms of like, how dare you potentially penalize women for X, Y, and Z. That was always the lens through which those headlines were written. But not many actually struggled with the problem that people that haven't got children that are then paying into the system and paying taxes to support our system are essentially relying on other children's or other people's children to support them in their late life. And is it, can't remember the statistic, you might know, but it's something, the elderly takes about 75% of the government's sort of spending, if you like. So the costs are massive for looking.
Well, it very much depends how you cut government spending. And I think one thing, for example, we know is that older people require much, much more spend in the health service, perhaps 5 or 6 times as much when they're in their 80s as when they're in their 20s or 30s. And whether you look at it through the lens of government spend, or you look at it through the lens of the availability of labour, when people are elderly, they need more healthcare. They need very often social care. They're very likely to retire, and you can change the retirement date, but it doesn't make that much difference. And people react to it very strongly. So I think you've exactly correctly put your finger on the problem, which is that if we don't have enough children, we will end up, and we increasingly are ending up as a society, and more countries are in the same situation. Many are worse than us, where we have more and more people of retirement age and fewer people of working age. Now, I'll just give you a couple of statistics on that. When I entered the workplace in the 1980s, and a lot of us late baby boomers were coming into the workforce, if you looked at the over 65s to the 20 to 65, so the retirees, and yes, you can change the date a little bit, as a share of the working population, it was a quarter. Now it's a third. By the middle of the century, so just in sort of 25 years, 30 years or so, it will be a half. So in other words, we'll have gone in my lifetime, if I'm still alive in the 2050s, from my 20s to say my 80s or 90s, we'll have gone through from having 4 workers for every retiree to having 2 workers for every retiree. And when the retirees are so intense in consuming government expenditure and the working population is having to pay the tax, then the whole system is not going to work. Now, one thing I did want to say, though, in response to your particular point about the outrage on my article, I have no problem with outrage. I think everything I said is reasonable and I'll stand by it, but I do not object to people objecting to me and having a good debate. I think one of the reasons to write the article and to write the books that I've written is to make sure that people are starting to discuss these things, because it's a bit late. So the point I made when I wrote the article, and there was a lot of publicity around, I went on the radio and the television a lot, the point I was making was this: nobody says how unfair, I don't have a child, I don't get child benefit. Now, there are 1,001 reasons you might not have a child at home. For example, I don't get child benefit because my children are all grown up, right? Other people don't get child benefit because they chose to have children. Other people didn't get child benefit because they couldn't have children. But nobody says, this is outrageous, and I couldn't have children, but I should still get child benefit. It's not my fault. So
I just lost you for a minute
nobody
there.
has a problem with that around the benefit system. I don't see why people should have a problem with that around
Paul?
the tax system. If you actually... Yes.
Are you still there?
Yes.
Sorry, I've just lost you for a bit.
You've gone quiet.
It's fine. I've just lost you for a bit, so I was checking whether you were still there. But I think
you'll be able to edit it a bit, presumably. Yeah. So I was just saying, if you are prepared to see people not get child benefit because they can't have children, then similarly, you should be prepared to see the tax system adjust in a similar way. Now, you may agree or disagree, but I don't think you've got any right to be outraged, because I don't see anybody being outraged by the child benefit system.
No, I think as a culture, we are slightly oversensitive to any potential infringement of what we consider our freedom, and it tends to kill the debate about the problems that are actually quite pressing and quite difficult. And like I said, I haven't seen in many of those headlines the actual wrestling with the problem at hand, that the aging population with the limited amount of working aged adults to support that generation, and how that society is going to look. So I just wanted to open up with it, because I did think that the Times chose the headline wisely.
Well, wisely if you want to get publicity. I have a friend who I told I was writing this article, and as soon as he saw it, he said, "That's clickbait." I didn't know what the meaning of the word clickbait was, but now I do. But, when you write an article, you don't choose the headline, and I've got no objection. I did a podcast with someone the other day, and he was very good. I thought he asked me very good questions. We had a very good discussion. And then he entitled the thing something like, wokeness is a death cult. Well, I didn't say that. I don't really... I'm very anti-woke, but I wouldn't quite call it that. And I think there is some sort of link between low fertility and wokeness, and issues around fertility, and arguing about demography and whether you can do that in a woke environment. All that's fine. That doesn't mean I said wokeness is a death cult. But I think when you stick your head above the parapet, you've got to be prepared to stand by what you say and what you write, in the understanding that people are going to put strap lines and headlines on it to get attention, which is just the way the world and algorithms work today. I completely understand that. So I'm not going to object to it.